Hi everyone, welcome to today's Crypto Carnival. My name is Elena Sinelnikova. I am CEO of Metis.io and I am today moderating this panel. And on the panel today is Phil No from ChainSafe, Ignis Terrainus from Bybit, and Ben Liu from SeekingDAO. So welcome guys. I would like just a quick round of introductions so you can introduce yourselves and our listeners and viewers can meet you. So we start with Phil. So Phil, please go ahead.
Hi, everyone. My name is Phil Ngo. I'm the project manager over at the Lodestar project with ChainSafe in Toronto, Canada. We work on a Ethereum consensus, which was formerly known as ETH2, as a client implementation for the Beacon chain. And that's where my focus is at the moment.
Thank you, Phil. And Ignis.
Thank you, Elena. Thanks for having me. My name is Ignis Terrainus. I'm the head of communications at Bybit. Well, while Bybit is mostly known as a centralized exchange, we do have a lot of investments and sort of incubated a bunch of projects in the DeFi space, and we are always very interested in just helping with the development of the sector as well as seeing it grow to its full potential. So very happy to be here.
Awesome. And Ben Liu.
Thank you for having me, Elena. My name is Ben. I'm from SeekingDAO. We are a crypto venture and incubator, and we have a focus on the DeFi sector. We help and in cases lead the product research and innovation of several DeFi projects, and including some top players in the Polkadot ecosystem. We also provide due diligence as a service to funds who are having need of help on due diligence of DeFi projects, as well as a second opinion on them. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Ignis. And we're going to our first question. So today we're going to be talking about DeFi, a lot about DeFi. So at this moment, how do we define the concept of DeFi or even DeFi 2? So what is a DeFi? And do you think there's all other concepts as nuanced as gamify or social fi also can be considered as a part of the DeFi? So Phil, what is your take on that?
Yeah, so decentralized finance has always been a thing that sort of organically grew as part of, the crypto values that we all love and behold in terms of decentralizing some of the opaque sort of financial companies out there. So with DeFi, we sort of introduce, like automated market makers. We're starting to get into like a bunch of other cool things like lending, borrowing, without needing the need for a centralized sort of provider to be able to allow us to do that. You go into a bank, they ask you for all this information in order to get you something as simple as a loan. And, DeFi has really changed the game for a lot of people. In terms of DeFi 1.0, I mean, that was sort of the introduction as part of experimenting with these different types of protocols to allow decentralized finance to exist. So these things would be, like the stuff you know and love, like Aave, Uniswap, and stuff like that. Whereas DeFi 2.0 can really help to fix some of the issues that we've discovered with DeFi 1.0. The new concepts such as GameFi, SocialFi, all of this stuff is still very, very much at the very beginning of starting to mature. And we're all still learning and still experimenting with a bunch of different sort of ways we can utilize this technology and to bring greater value to users, to developers and stuff in the ecosystem. So in terms of what these derivatives can be, they can be anything from, anything that can be turned into a token of value is now able to have like a price determined by market supply demand forces. Could be some gaming tokens, in-game items, collectibles, even something as cool as like a content creator's time. There's also awesome things sort of coming down the pipeline with that. And there's a lot of things we have to navigate, including like regulation, compliance, and stuff that we'll get into, I'm sure, with the panel.
Well, yeah, we're going to get into the regulations questions, but before that, we still want to explore a little bit more about DeFi, and maybe not even a little. So, Igneous, what is your take on DeFi, and how do you see, do we even move into DeFi 2.0? And is there any issues of DeFi 1.0 that you were aware about that we're fixing in that? And then again, gamify, socialify, still, like if you have any comment on that, please.
Yeah, the poster child of DeFi 2.0, Olympus DAO and Wonderland are both experiencing problem. But you know, in the long term, we are definitely still very optimistic about the overall development trajectory of the entire space. So DeFi 2.0 kind of like came about to address the problem of mercenary liquidity with you know, kind of like the automated market maker owning the liquidity. But we really think, you know, what DeFi you know, the promises it hold is really just to kind of like with a truly kind of inclusive approach when it comes to providing financial services. It doesn't require you know, the traditional KYC, the credit checks. You know, if you go to a bank, you ask for like a line of credit, you're trying to open an account, there's a lot of like paperwork that needs to be done, and a lot of like centralized credentialism, whereas in decentralized finance, basically, so long as you have the collateral, you're able to get the loan or get whatever financial services that might be useful to you. So we really think, you know, DeFi is the true promise of what sort of like attracted us into crypto in the first place. But it's going to be a long and arduous journey. Even if a long and arduous means much faster in crypto, we still see, you know, the true potential of you know, truly mass adoption ready DeFi is still years away. But what we want to do at Bybit is that we want to pick and choose kind of like what are the areas that we can be of most help, and then we try to kind of like accelerate or be that catalyst in those areas. And when it comes to kind of like the other new kind of like sectors like GameFi, SocialFi, and even now we're seeing SyncFi, like a bunch of internet dudes simping on some e-girls. I think it's really just kind of like what. In a way, it's also like a marketing strategy. What is the best way to kind of like acquire customers is to reward them for something that they're going to do anyway. So, you know, they're not necessarily going to be the direction or like the end product, but they are definitely a very interesting kind of exploration into how you can get more people into the space with more liquidity, with more brilliant minds accrued in the space. You can kind of have more innovations and really address more of the problems. So we really think you know, all these are beneficial to the overall development of the space.
Thank you, Igneous. And Ben, now it's to you. So, and then maybe I will customize a little bit of this question to you. Like, what good ideas and project you see in your incubator's life that related to DeFi, and where we are right now at this DeFi 2.0, gamify, socialify,
Right.
with your incubator?
Sure. So first of all, I agree with what the other two guests are thinking in general. I think in the very core, DeFi 2.0 as an innovation on top of DeFi 1.0 is really driven by increasing capital efficiency. So when we're thinking about projects like Abracadabra, projects like Olympus DAO, they are really aiming to using existing infrastructure in DeFi 1.0 as the base layer and build Legos on top of it. And we've seen so many of these cases already. For example, we have Curve as the fundamental layer, and building on top of Curve, there's Convex, there's something unconvex, and there's Tokamak that is overall aiming at the DGov aspect of the entire liquidity war. So we've already seen a lot of organic growth in the DeFi spectrum, both DeFi 1.0 and DeFi 2.0, in the sense that we've seen Legos building on top of each other. Something that I've seen recently that are interesting. Well, I always see, at least at the current stage, the growth of DeFi in counterparts with traditional finance, which is where the majority of my background is. So um, in traditional finance, we have something called insurance. That obviously isn't too big in the DeFi space now. There are a lot of interesting innovations in the space. Well, there's DYDX. There is a protocol that was launched last year called Bumper Finance. And there are several others that are aiming at this insurance sector that is sort of at a nuanced stage in the DeFi sector. And I think it's going to have a really meaningful boom in the next year.
Oh, that's really cool. And then maybe I will throw at you the next questions about the layer twos, because there's past 2 years, there's been a massive, transformation and migration to the layer twos, because layer one, so maybe layer ones not always provide that amount of, the cost effectiveness and the speed as projects needed, right? The DeFi projects needed. So do you think a layer two and cross-chain solution will be, this is the new norm for DeFi? And if you have any layer twos that you kind of favor, like we would like to learn about them as well. So Ben, and that's back to you.
Right.
Mhm.
Well, layer two cross-chain, yes. So they're both valid, propositions at the moment. As we all know, Ethereum layer one is it's very costly for retail users to use on a daily basis, especially. So, and it's going to take at least 2 years at this point for ETH to upgrade to 2.0, right? So, I mean, meanwhile, there really is a huge gap in the market that foster the growth for high efficiency, low gas networks. So, I mean, this really creates a great opportunity for cross-chain protocols, bridges, as well as some other third generation public chains like Polkadot, Near, Avalanche, etc., that features high efficiency and low cost, right? So at the end of the day, I see the entire blockchain universe as a multi-chain status in which interoperability would be key. So to answer your question, I don't really know which layer two or cross-chain protocol I would favor. But I think in general, as a sector, as a concept, this would definitely thrive in the next 2 years. But at the end of the day, the way I envision it is that, again, going back to traditional finance, there are a lot of things that we can do in traditional finance very easily that are not so easily, that cannot be easily done in crypto. For example, if I have some money, I want to loan some more and buy a house, rent it out, get more income and get more mortgage on top of it. It sounds like a pretty, not say easy, but a pretty common idea in traditional finance, right? But when we're thinking about such easy transactions in traditional finance in the context of crypto, really we're talking about one house and the house chain, its value being able to interpret it in the bank chain and being able to use that house token as a collateral to secure the loan on the bank chain, right? So, layer two, obviously it makes a lot of sense. There's huge TVL already on Ethereum 1.0. Obviously, migrating to 2.0 is very cost effective for projects as well as for users. But at the same time, I really think the future of DeFi lies in interoperability, because I envision this multi-chain universe that we're going to be living in. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. And yeah, so maybe I also would like to get my take on that. And this is something related to Vitalik. Yes, actually today or yesterday he tweeted about the ETH 2.0. In ETH 2.0, the block time will still be 12 seconds, right? So it's not going to be any faster than that to preserve a decentralization. And decentralization, as we know, this is an ultimate security. If the chain is decentralized, it is, it's not vulnerable to any of the influence from outside, in a sense, right? So this is the Ethereum direction, to keep it decentralized. So therefore, the block time will be 12. So the only thing that Vitalik sees, for example, he's only one person. Other people might see differently, but it's going with the channels, or the layer 2 state channels, or the layer 2s. So, and that is going to be a direction that Ethereum Foundation taken and recommending for the projects that would like to integrate with Ethereum. So layer 2s are the way. So Phil, do you have any thoughts about on the layer 2 cross-chain functions? Any favorites, favorite layer 2s that you have at the moment?
So there's quite a few out there, and it's only getting larger day by day. They all use different sort of mechanisms to sort of create this computation layer on top of the layer 1 of Ethereum, because obviously there's only so much scalability that can be done at the base layer unless you're sacrificing other parts of the blockchain trilemma, which would be security, scalability, or decentralization. So it's this, if you haven't looked it up, the trilemma is a very interesting thing to try to solve. But when it comes to layer 2s, that's sort of the roadmap that has been laid out as to what will get us scalability with maintaining the sort of decentralization that Ethereum has within the next at least couple of years, because Ethereum upgrades do take time, and because of the sort of risks involved when making such a large change, especially with that much amount of business activity on a chain like Ethereum, it's much more important for us to get something like the merge right than to mess it up. So when it comes to layer 2 things, it's very important that we try to move as many people as we can onto layer 2 for things like DeFi. It will really drastically improve the user experience. In terms of the way that people are trying to solve this problem, there's some out there called like optimism, which is one way of trying to solve this problem. There's also, zero knowledge proofs that people are working on. Those are still, in early research phases, and now starting to get a little bit more experimental. So that's another way of solving it. There's also side chains, which I'm sure you're familiar of. Like probably the most popular one that comes to mind is Polygon. So there are many different ways to try to solve this problem. In terms of what wins out, it's still anybody's guess. We just want to ensure that as long as people are starting to get used to and start building upon layer 2s, in the near term, we'll have that sort of scalability with the security of the Ethereum blockchain layer 1 to be able to have people be able to do DeFi at like a retail level. So those are pretty much like what I think the future kind of holds for that. Layer 1 will mostly be used for lower level functions of the blockchain, stuff related to consensus and state execution, and more for the tech guys to really deal with.
Thank you, Phil. Yes, and I completely agree. So this is the trilemma exists, and it will always be present, the decentralization versus security versus performance and cost. So this is the So I can make a quadrilemma even that we need to need to solve. And that, yes, so this is exactly, so all these scaling solutions are taking a different approach. And yes, even though the recommended way to go is the layer 2, which is the ones that inherits the security from Ethereum and stay decentralized. But yes, other scalability solutions as a side chains, for example, that build their own security and then their own level of decentralization. So they are as well becoming really popular, and some of them are way more popular than than the others as well. Yes, but I would like to get into a discussion a little bit about the being decentralized and what blockchain means. And decentralization means all different things for the people. So decentralization could be that platform can survive without the team, so something like that. Or if the team is decentralized enough that they are in every part of the world, for example, or the key amount of key holders is spread out among like the different infrastructure layers. Like, for example, if the nodes are in like all in Amazon or something like that, that some people not consider it decentralized, but really decentralization for everyone, it's a different concept. So this is something that I discovered recently as well. So when we're talking about decentralization, odds are that we're talking about different things. So I just quickly, what is a decentralization for you? So Phil, like what do you mean when you say that this, the system or the chain or anything is decentralized? What does it mean for you?
For me, it's reliability and trust. When it comes down to it, at the end of the day, blockchains are meant to be able to continue creating blocks without any sort of downtime, which a lot of people in the Bitcoin community love to tout as, we're near, if not 100% uptime. So when it comes to decentralization, it's important to have the people who are block producing or block attesting, at least in the Ethereum side, to ensure that the liveness of the blockchain is never sort of interfered upon. Can any sort of like super majority would be able to sort of fork the chain or anything like that. Just preventing the whole aspect of what makes centralization what it is, having, whether that's like a cartel that is able to sway the influences of what is the correct chain and stuff like that. So decentralization means that no one entity can really affect the outcomes of the blockchain, and also the reliability aspect of it, which is why when it comes to Ethereum consensus, which is basically ETH 2.0, we have 5 different beacon chain clients written in 5 different languages. So in terms of the likelihood of the Ethereum blockchain going down after the merge will hopefully be less likely now that you have 5 different clients in 5 different languages that are able to keep the chain live, to prevent it from going down in case there's an issue with one of the clients, as an example.
Thank you, Phil. Yes, for me, for example, decentralization, if I am part of the core team, let's say in Ethereum, somebody come to me and hold a gun at my head and say, do something, stop the chain, or, affect it in any other way. And I just simply can't. So that's for me, this is the definition of the decentralization, maybe very graphical. Sorry about that. But yes, so this is something that we always keep in mind when we're building a decentralized world as we envision it. So Igneous, what is a decentralization for you, and what is your take on the centralized exchanges? So how they deal with regulation, considering that they are actually centralized?
Yeah, thanks for the question, double barrel question. To extend the gun metaphor a little bit. I think sort of like for me, decentralization needs to start with governance. It is important that participants in a system are able to voice their opinion, are able to see their valid opinion getting championed and get voted in, executed on chain. So the problem, I think, so like when we were talking about the layer 2 solution, it's always kind of like the rich guys, they can always get their will through one way or another, and the adding and removing liquidity on Uniswap may not be a lot for those ones moving large sums of capital, but what it hurts is always kind of the retail who it's really eating their bottom line. So I really think they can feel as part of the decision-making process as some of the largest whales is a very important sign of decentralization. And decentralization is not kind of like, you turn it on and off, it's 0 and 1, it's always the spectrum. And, we shouldn't kind of like make decentralization as a sort of like terminal kind of like a status. We should just always walk toward it. But that also just doesn't mean that decentralization should be a virtue just in itself, because like someone can say, oh, I have a decentralized this, but it doesn't do anything. It's not good for anyone. Decentralization should always be a means to an end that really kind of like encourages participation, that really kind of like distributes more evenly, or help build a more level playing field. I think decentralization should serve a purpose that really opens the door to more participants and make them feel that they have more sway than they otherwise would have, is my understanding of it. So for Bybit, we of course are a centralized exchange, and regulation is actually great in a sense that we are already large enough that any regulation will basically hamstring the smaller players more than us, because we can always adapt and just kind of like make sure that we work with the regulators, and regulators in many areas you would see like it's basically like the narrative just keeps changing, and you would actually see in many places, especially kind of like smaller nations and more progressive nations, they actually really want crypto players to stay onshore instead of letting innovations go offshore. So in terms of regulation, it hasn't really been a huge problem for us, but we really see decentralization as something that's going to become more and more important in the future. That is why about mid-year last year, we launched, we helped launch and be the first proponent of a DAO. It's currently the world's largest DAO in terms of treasury, more than 2.1 billion bit DAO. Bybit has pledged to contribute 2.5 bips of its futures trading volume to BitDAO. We contributed 400 million into the treasury just last year. And BitDAO is already one of the biggest players in Web3, in DeFi, in DAOs, in autonomous entities. Earmarked 633 million just in Q3 and Q4 last year. That actually included some of the things we talked about. So there is a 200 million grant to ZK Sync's ZK DAO that BitDAO and ZK Sync are putting together to basically reward people for coming up with zero knowledge proofs and zero knowledge infrastructure that we really see, as one of the most important things in the future. We're also working with optimistic roll-ups, of course. And then we also worked with student organizations from 8 elite universities to create Education DAO that is helping with bootstrapping kind of like the knowledge base of the next generation of developers. We are also working with Forte, a gaming company, to create a 500 million blockchain game accelerator that is already up and running. So this is kind of like through those kind of like fractal expansion. Instead of having kind of like Bybit as the brand doing all these things, we would kind of like put sort of like money where our mouth is at. Like we look at all those sectors and vectors we want more growth at, we really think out the future, and we would contribute with actual funds, liquidity, research and development to really sort of like help in the ways that as a centralized player, we cannot do ourselves.
Thank you. And what do you think? Can DeFi and CeFi, which is centralized finance, they coexist in the future?
Yeah, definitely. Like I think just kind of, even if we kind of extend that analogy to traditional finance, Ben was talking about that. In the future, are all banks really going to go away? I think like even just kind of like even in the most extreme form, like the older generation kind of like fade out, and then everyone has a mobile phone, everyone knows how to deal with a fintech app. You would still have kind of like basically one brick and mortar banks, and all the banks can kind of like inhabit in the same place, and then basically there's always kind of like a level of customer support that people would like, and there's always going to be kind of like there are people who like to do things themselves, there are people who like to have a helping hand, and it doesn't really have to be kind of like a competitive or antagonistic relationship. Of course there's going to be a lot of competitiveness, but in a way I see more kind of like crypto and just kind of like DeFi, CeFi, addressing some of the inefficiencies and just like overhead cost in traditional finance, instead of like centralized crypto exchanges fighting with decentralized finance. I think that is if that come to pass, it's going to be a battle much down the road, because the traditional finance and the banking system is so much larger, and the asset classes, the commercial real estate is 300 trillion. You don't have to fight amongst yourselves. You have a much bigger total addressable market in kind of like the boomer finance space. And just to kind of linger on the point a little bit more, 75% of the wealth is currently still in the hands of the boomer generation. When they eventually fade out, we're going to see the largest wealth transfer in human history. And even if just 10% of that goes into crypto, you would just see kind of like so much more upside, and just like so much more interesting things, innovations, and so many people getting attracted to this space. So we really like I think kind of like the battle between kind of like crypto CeFi, crypto DeFi is somewhat misconceived. I don't think it's going to be something that's going to play out anytime soon.
Thank you, Ignace. Yes, and when we are talking to our banks, so for example, CryptoChicks has RBC, which is Royal Bank of Canada, as a partner, and they just recently they asked us to educate 150 of their employees in decentralized finance. So the banks are learning. So CeFi institutions, they are learning about DeFi, and then so we can see something going to happen in the near time, I hope. So because they're learning, they have some plan. So it's going to be interesting to see. But also I would like to touch a little bit on the DAO side, because you guys, so Ignace, you mentioned that you have your BitBuy DAO, and this is the governance is something that that's what means decentralization for you. So Ben, for you, is decentralization the same? Is that a governance structure, or this is a different? And I would like also learn a little bit more about the SeekingDAO. So how do you actually operate this DAO? Like what is it? How does it look like?
Right. So, well, first to clarify, there is nothing DAO about our organization other than just the name. So we actually love the idea of DAO. Eventually, we want to formalize our organization as a DAO, but for now, we're just four people who are, who share the same passion, want to, deep dive into crypto world, and we formed it. And well, DAO basically has sort of a pun. One in English obviously means decentralized autonomous organization, and in Chinese it actually means the way, right? So SeekingDAO also serves the dual meaning of seeking the way. So for us, the way I see DAO is that it has so many different kinds of applications that it's not being explored by the market. So for example, this is also something that we're seeing in the market as well. Speaking as a venture capitalist myself, we're seeing much harder, or much higher hurdles for small organizations like us to get in the door of good deals. Used to be much easier, not anymore, just because there are so many institutional money, big monies coming into the sector now, right? So what does a DAO do in this context, for example? Essentially, people can pull their money together and form a VC together, right? So that has actually an added benefit for projects to reach out to DAOs like this as a venture capital investor, in the sense that it will not only have access to money, but also access to a huge community and user base potentially, right? So we see DAO as a very generic structure of organization that can serve so much different purposes. And also last night, we were talking to this project that aims to form this charity through a DAO structure, which also is a very interesting proposition. So I guess without giving more specific examples, my point is there really is a lot of potential in DAO as a generic structure that serves different purposes. Yeah.
Thank you, Ben. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And this is something that we are all together exploring right now, all this decentralization and DAO and how it is mean to be, being an organization that is decentralized. And I would like to touch a little bit now about the metaverse. So Ben, and then question to you: do you have in your incubator? Do you have any projects that are dealing with the metaverse and DeFi? And what is your take on the future of the metaverse?
Right. So Metaverse, we do have a position of Metaverse projects in our portfolio, but that being said, Metaverse at the current stage is not really tapping into aggregating all kinds of other sectors that can interact with each other in blockchain. But ultimately, I see Metaverse being the aggregator and the unified setting for different sectors or different streams of topics, for example, NFT, DeFi, to interact with each other. So, for example, again, I like to use I love the example of buying houses. So, for example, right now in Sandbox or any of these Metaverse big names, if I want to buy a piece of land, I have to use my own ETH, right? Or I have to get ETH from somewhere with some other collateral and then buy that property. However, ultimately, that's the way I see it. If there is strong enough of a consensus of all these Metaverse properties, then we can actually bring traditional finance on chain in the context of those Metaverse properties. So can I buy a property in Sandbox by putting down 35% while loaning 65% from someone that is providing me with a loan in terms of ETH, right? So it's use cases like this that gets me very excited in the prospect of Metaverse. But I've also been talking to a lot of people who's been in Metaverse, AR, VR sector for numerous years. The current stage of development does not support such kind of use cases or functionalities. But nevertheless, I think we're heading in the right direction. And from what we've seen in the market in the past year or so, we're getting the right attractions. So big boys are coming to the sector, and we're seeing a lot of changes.
Well, that's really cool. We'll be waiting for the big boys to come over. So, Phil, do you have any thoughts on the metaverse and its future?
Yeah, definitely. The metaverse is very interesting because we're only just at the very beginning of how this all might play out. When it comes to blockchain, blockchain actually is such a great invention because it allows us to have digitally verifiable and scarce tokens that is on a distributed ledger that's not controlled by any one party. So that's a huge, huge step forward in terms of how we utilize the internet. Like, for example, NFTs, non-fungible tokens, is basically just a standard It's a standard that basically says that this digital token has some sort of a unique ID and can be distinguished from something else. So you can't really have an exact copy of something on the internet, which is very, very interesting to me. How NFTs will be used is yet to be seen in terms of what it'll be used for in the commonplace. So far, we've seen things like JPEGs, images, art, that really took off, but people associate the word NFTs with art, which is not the case. NFTs are just a standard. Simply like, how when you use the internet, we all utilize the TCP/IP protocol for computers to talk to each other, but it's just a standard. And we've built, email, instant messaging, the blockchain, everything on top of this standard. So that's a sort of like a good way of looking at it. How we sort of use NFTs is really only limited to our imaginations. So you could think of something like social tokens as being something interesting in terms of like NFTs. You could probably be like a celebrity or a content creator, offer out like a social token in which represents your time. You might get exclusive access, like might get meet and greets, stuff like that. Another cool thing that I sort of see the metaverse doing would be getting more into the regulated financial space. So dealing with regulated financial instruments like stocks and bonds. It all falls under something called security tokens, which will require some regulations for us to sandbox in that world. Gaming tokens is another big one. So over at ChainSafe, we have a gaming SDK that allows developers to create assets that they can import into their video games. So I totally see, one day being able to transfer assets in between video games, having verifiably scarce resources. If you've ever played the game Diablo, how you would pick up these items and stuff, you would sell your eBay accounts with all these rare items and stuff, but now you can have it backed by the blockchain as verifiably scarce and prove ownership of it. So like a universal standard on like importing these collectibles will probably happen. Ranking systems, like the competitiveness of video games and having some sort of gamifiable ranking system that people can't take advantage of. It's the metaverse is limited to our imagination. That's really what it comes down to.
Yes, I would love to start imagining this future world that it's going to be. So today we talked about DeFi and DeFi 2.0 and gamify, and we talked about also centralization, decentralization, the regulations. We talked about the metaverse. We talked about DAOs. We talked about pretty much all the terms that exist right now in the blockchain. So if you imagine in the future, and if you imagine in the future of your company, that the one that you're working in, and you put in it in place of the kind of like overall world, what this picture is going to be. So Phil, for you, so what is the ChainSafe is going to be in this future world?
I definitely see us contributing a lot to the open source development of the specifications that we will use in this future metaverse. So a lot of the ways that we ensure that the blockchain works, things are interoperable, things are actually composable, so people can actually build stuff like the money Legos that Ben talked about, requires us to be coordinated in a very specific way, which means following standards. So ChainSafe works on a lot of open source tooling and projects for developers. And we are usually the ones who are doing the research and development and gaining consensus on how things should work. Where we play that role is, being able to coordinate that and having people on the same standard, and so that we can have these sort of interoperable networks, and being able to have a standard on how like gaming tokens work, or how, like ERC 721, which is the NFT standard, us playing a vital role in ensuring that the metaverse is compatible with as many people and is reachable by people from all over the globe, is sort of where I see ChainSafe playing its largest role in getting crypto out into the masses and help basically reducing the barriers to utilizing the blockchain, which includes the user experience.
Thank you, Phil. And so, Igneous, what is your take on the future world, and how do you see Bybit in the future world?
Yeah, thanks for that question. There's almost so many to talk about. It's difficult to wrap everything in a short answer. I was previously on GeckoCon late last year, talked about kind of like Web3 and Metaverse for like 45 minutes. I'm not going to repeat everything I said there, but I really liked what Phil said about kind of like the internet protocol TCP/IP. We really see kind of like a Metaverse enabled Web3 is kind of like to correct the perversion from the Web2 giants in making what was supposed to be a level playing field where everyone basically controls their own data, controls their information into a rent-seeking kind of feudalistic dystopian world wherein like we think we are the users, but we are really kind of like just producing data for the Facebooks and Googles to sell to advertisers. In Web3, power should be really returned to those people who are actually contributing time, like spending their time using the experience. So like a number of airdrops we saw in the past month and weeks with the Ethereum naming service as well as OpenDAO, we think are really, really good examples of that. Like they basically reward people who actually spend time and use the service. And we want to do something like that also. And, in the decentralized future, in the Web3 world, in the Metaverse enabled Web3 world, we see ourselves Bybit as, almost the infrastructure provider, because, people say, oh, it's just exchange, but like, and I think, and it's the same people who say, oh, I really like blockchain, but I don't think Bitcoin, blah, blah, blah. But like, they fail to understand that to incentivize people's participation, to incentivize people's putting time into it, you need to put a value on things. This is like, 101 in really just kind of getting people into the space in the first place. Like Bitcoin, most people came in as speculators. They saw there's a monetary value, and then they learn about coding, they learn about programming, and they learn about financial knowledge and financial literacy. So we really see ourselves, it's open platform where it's open forum where people are able to express their opinion in the positions that they take. And we are there to kind of like give people an idea of what things are valued at, how they can add value, how they can extract value from spending time in this place. And we want to kind of help create kind of like a environment where people are really rewarded for the effort they put in, for the time, for the work, for the just the world building that they contribute in. I like this kind of like story about J.R. Tolkien, the writer of The Lord of the Rings, and he actually the stress is on the final syllable, so it's actually not Tolkien, but Tolkien. He invented a bunch of Elvish languages, Sindarin, and so on and so forth. And then he thought, it's such a pity if those languages are just there, in the ether. So he created this expensive Middle Earth just so that it can house all those languages. What we think, the future of Metaverse and everything, it should be like an organizing principle, like a common almost law, a storytelling mechanism that people are able to contribute time and build, and like all the effort they make should be transportable and interoperable. So like what Phil said about like the Diablo games, like that is why we are working with Forte to bring about Gamer, just so that the in-game assets you kind of create in one game can be transported to the next, so you can transfer it for monetary value, so that you just keep rewarding people for putting the time, putting the effort, and really just contributing to the overall growth of the ecosystem. And then you really kind of make sure that it's just snowballs, instead of kind of like fighting one another and then creating silos, creating kind of fiefdoms, and then we really think that is doomed to fail. Whereas if you really encourage everyone to contribute, and everything they do is in addition to what the previous generation has built, it has a far more sustainable future ahead of us.
Thank you, Ignis. So you draw this, extended picture of, where everybody is contributing and Bybit is providing infrastructure. I love it. So Ben, what does your future look like in this big world?
Oh yeah, well, I see largely the same picture as Phil and Igneous just described, and I'm not sure whether I mentioned before, but the reason I went into DeFi is I absolutely love the idea of trustless, how the trustless feature, smart contract that anybody who has a good idea and a reasonable set of tools uh, to design and implement an idea in the DeFi world will be able to benefit from it. And that really defied, the biggest barrier of entering into providing financial services in traditional finance, which is called credit, right? So I really see this as being one huge, like the biggest barrier taken out from entering into the financial services provision sector. Uh, and that's why we've seen such rapid innovation in DeFi world in the past 1 or 2 years, and we're going to continue to see that happening. So that being said, for us as someone who's standing in between those innovation and the traditional money, we really see a duty of ourselves to help funds and incubators understanding what are the right products that we're seeing in the market, and helping them more or less diverting the money into the right channels, and eventually help the growth and innovation of the DeFi as a whole.
Thank you, Ben. So, and in my turn, also, how I see the world. Yes, I see the world. The future world is decentralized, and of course, in Metis, for example, so we are building a Web3 platform for businesses, so they could do. And register and also get the people and hire people in that decentralized world. So this is something that Metis does, and of course, I would like you all to invite um, I would like to invite you all into this future that we're building. So where everyone has a place, and that would be the infrastructure provider by Bybit and the standards developer by SaintChafe, and also so chain safe, sorry, and also the SeekingDAO bringing the right projects and the right capital into it. So let's build this world together. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Ignis. Thank you, Ben. It was awesome to hear from you today. And also thank you for the organizers, the Crypto Carnival.